Hello, welcome back to Atlas Within. I'm Andres. Today I'm going to be covering weight loss and the journey to weight loss. And this will be based around essentially what I've been experiencing over the last almost 2 months, almost 60 days in this journey that I've put myself on. And I want to cover basically 4 points that I think are important for us to kind of factor in when we're taking on anything like this, just because there are elements that you might not think about or variables that you might take for granted that actually make a difference. So to kick things off, I want to mention, and this is obviously on the back of my last, I think, 2 check-ins at this point, that progress isn't necessarily linear. Why? Well, in my last 2 check-ins, my weight has been varied. It's been up and it's been down, and I am not entirely sure where I'm at right now. So, what does that mean for anyone relying on the scale to gauge progress? Well, what I will say is, in addition to the weight that I've been measuring and that I've been tracking, I'm also now taking my waist measurements, my waist circumference, to see how that's going, see how my belly fat essentially is progressing. And thankfully that has stayed on track. That is going down, so that's a good sign. And the other way that I'm tracking things is the mirror. Just looking at myself every now and again to see, are there any changes? Can I see things a bit more defined? Or am I just less rounded? So progress, I think, is one of those things that you'll have to ideally measure in different ways, just because, like I said, the weight, which is what I initially, and I'm still tracking, my goal is to lose weight. Whilst that is important to me, it's unfortunately right now not giving me much motivation or incentive or drive or perspective as to whether or not I'm doing the right or wrong thing. So I'm having to rely on the other 2 elements, so that's the waist measurement and the mirror test, shall we say, to just see for the time being, do I need to tweak things? Am I on track? So yeah, just something to bear in mind, that any progress, even if the scales are correct and for some reason I'm fluctuating and it's maybe just something I'm doing, even if you are on a journey, if you are undertaking a goal like this one and you do see that you're up and down, the idea is to think about long-term progress. And as an example, if you know about the stock markets, the share prices, they go up and down. So if you invest, you buy some shares and you stare at them every single day to see what the stock value is, you're going to see you're going to make a gain, you're going to make a loss, you're going to make a gain, you're going to make a loss. But if you zoom out over the course of, let's say, a couple of months, maybe a year, you'll see that the ups and downs do eventually lead to a higher overall result. So with weight loss or anything to do with weight, where you're trying to, like I said, shed some fat, hopefully get some muscle, whatever it might be, the scale or the graph should, in the long run, go down or up, I guess, depending on what your goals are. But the idea is, over the long term, you should see progress. So sometimes you have to kind of step back and you have to think about the bigger picture to keep you going. Because unfortunately, if you're looking at it day to day, week to week, sometimes you might not see the results that you're expecting, and that could be a bit of a hit to everything you're doing. So keep at it. And that brings on to the next point, actually. Be persistent, or it requires persistence. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that, yes, you'd love to be able to make big changes over the next week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, 30 days, right? You'd love to make those changes, and I've seen people make changes in that time period. But big changes and long-term changes happen over a long period of time, and you just have to keep at it. When you begin, you'll have decided that you want to achieve X, and you'll do it by sticking to plan Y. Over the course of that journey, your progress towards that goal, you're going to tweak your plan. And you might even tweak your goal because you'll be a bit more knowledgeable. You'll start to see things a bit more clearly and understand other things that you maybe never thought about. So you'll have to tweak as you go along in order to keep going towards the goal, which, like I said, you may even change slightly, or you may just change the plan. Whatever it might be, the idea is keep at it, keep going. And it's good. Every day that you stick to it is a day more that you are getting closer to that goal. So every little bit counts. Every day, every minute, every hour that you're doing something that's striving towards that goal is a win. And you just have to keep building all those tiny wins until eventually you get to the big win, which is obviously the goal that you've wanted to achieve. The next item, which also kind of leads on to from that point, is food choices and making better food choices. So as you know, with my current plan, I'm not being very strict. Like, I haven't essentially gotten rid of all processed foods, all sugar, all unhealthy deemed foods, shall we say. I do have an 80-20 ratio, which thankfully I think I'm sticking way more to it now than I was when I first started. So that's a good sign, that's very good. And that's reliant on me making better food choices where I can, and just kind of gauging if I am gonna eat something that's maybe a bit processed, like say a pastry, which I still eat. I still have some pastries, not all the time, but I still eat them. One tip that I'll quickly mention about that is, whereas I used to have a pastry with a coffee, I might just have half a pastry. And what that means is, well, I might just have half of the day, or if I do want to come back for seconds, I'll just have the other half. So then in the end, I only have one. If you think about sweets, treats, things that you can split and potentially come back and have the rest of it later on, in the end, it means that you're having, let's say, one portion as opposed to 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, and however you might split it. So, little tip there. But yeah, better food choices, they're making the difference in terms of like my waist, for example. Even though my weight's been a bit odd, my waist is definitely getting trimmer, which is great. And that is all down to just eating healthier, more nutrient rich food, less processed food. Yeah, and it makes a difference. And these are tiny tweaks I've made. I make conscious decisions to maybe not have a packet of chocolate, shall we say, and I might just have, honestly speaking, I might just have a bit more at dinner time so I don't crave those treats later on. That's just me. It's a bit of a weird example, but the point is, if I feel I might be hungry with the current meal I'm having and it will lead me to overeat or indulge in something I don't want to, I might just have a bit more, let's say at dinner time, which will keep me fuller for longer, and then I can just get through the day without binging on anything that I would maybe regret. I say maybe because it's still tasty. And the last bit that I want to mention is, and this feeds into, I think, the beginning in terms of the bigger picture. Long-term changes are best achieved if what you're doing now, so any changes you've made to your diet, any exercises you've started undertaking, physical activity, whatever it is you're doing, if you can maintain what you're doing right now for the next foreseeable future. And by that I mean to the end of time, if that's what you want. If you can do it for that period of time, then you're good. Because you're going to be achieving changes. You're going to be getting close to a goal that you've set yourself. But the great news is that once you reach the goal, if what you're doing now is something you can just maintain because it's part of your routine, it's part of your life, then you'll keep going. You'll go past that goal. Of course, you may have to, once again, tweak, refine, change a bit, depending on, obviously, you've reached the first goal, but now you want your second goal, and the second goal is a bit more different. Maybe, for example, you wanted weight loss to begin with, and you've achieved that, and now you want to be lean, so then that's another goal, which requires other slight changes. Whatever it might be, if you've managed to incorporate all these current changes that you're applying to your life, then you're good. Then it's great. That's fantastic news. I'm mentioning this because I think it's very easy for people to want quick results and short-term sacrifices. So what I mean is like a 30-day challenge. Like I said, I've seen people make changes in 30 days. It's possible. But the way they achieve those goals, I just don't know how many people can stick to it, because it's usually very drastic. It usually requires a lot of willpower, a lot of effort, a lot of change, and potentially not feeling good throughout the course of it until the very end, where you've achieved X goal. But then what do you do then? You just go back to your lifestyle, because you certainly can't stay doing what you're doing right now, because it's not something you can do to live on. And by that I mean restricted diets, a lot of exercise, maybe other things that have to be in place in order for you to achieve your goal. So yeah, when you're doing things, do them gradually. If you think adding one session of exercise is enough, because adding 2 might be too much, then do 1. One's already better than none. With nutrition, if you're finding it hard to change or add, let's say, vegetables, fruits to your diets for the whole day, then just do it to 1. Choose 1 meal and add some fruit or veg. Both be great, but just choose 1 and do that for a few days. It all adds up. It takes a while, but that's where persistence comes in. So yeah, small changes, better choices, persistence, and seeing the bigger picture and not the immediate results or the short-term results. All of this will just keep you going. It will help you achieve, in my case, or in the case of what's happening right now, weight loss, that will be achieved. There are just these variables that you have to be mindful of, and that you just have to focus on, not lose sight of what the future is or what your end goal is, and know that it's gradual. And I think that's quite nice, because it means that it just takes some time, but you'll get there. And like I said, by the time you get there, it will feel like you did that automatically. You didn't have to think too much about it, and you can keep going. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover on this video, those potential points that have really highlighted or become highlighted to me in the last almost, like I said, 60 days, 2 months that I've been doing this. No doubt I'll probably have other things or other lessons to learn as I progress into the last third of this journey. And and I'll be obviously sharing that with you as I come across those. So thanks again for watching. Catch you on the next one. Have a good one. All right. Bye.